Well, I guess we'll just do this. I don't know what I'm doing tonight.
Does anybody ever know what they're doing?
Does anybody ever really know what time it is? Does anybody ever care? Oh, um, let's do this. No, that's not what I want to do.
There you are.
Yeah, sorry guys. Like
No, I can't.
just there was a time when I knew what I was doing and that time is gone. Um and we used to have a way to like make these boxes round and I don't remember how to do that anymore. So whatever, we'll just do it this way since I'm an idiot. Hey guys, how you doing today?
I'm alive.
I'm alive too and existing.
Yes. That is very much how I'm feeling today. Um can we at least choose that? Yeah, well, that doesn't really work there, does it? Yeah, we're all just kind of making it through the day right now, I think. Um how's your week been?
Mm, it's been. Am I echoing?
No, you're fine.
Okay. So, um, I've been creating things and making things happen. So I'm very, very exhausted.
Well, that's always very exciting. I'm happy to hear that. Wolf?
I couldn't answer the question right away because I have a sandwich in my mouth. I just went grocery shopping today, so I was trying really hard to like make a food and make coffee and set up and do this, and I'm like, can I get on time? Um, my week, it's Thursday. That's all you need to know. It went from Monday to Thursday.
It did in like the blink of an eye.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome to BookTube Writers Group. It is my week to do the facilitating. And it was a bad week for me to be the host because I'm a mess. But we are going to start out with some pieces that purportedly are examples of describing a character uh, without info dumping. I was trying to write an original piece for this, um, and it didn't come together on time. So I'll be pulling something from probably Dark White for that. But in the meantime, do you guys want to flip a coin to see which one of you goes first, or do you want me to just point to someone?
Does
Fine.
Vespera even have hands? Actually, I'd ask if Vespera could go so I can eat my food.
Yes, that makes sense. Does that work for you, Vespera?
Yeah, that works.
All right, take it away.
All right. I gotta bring it up. You ain't mind me. This one's titled A Preserved Lady. Dried leatherly with a subtle, smooth roughness, the skin petrified, with a sunken red clay color. I have never seen this before. Not in such a humid environment. This should not be possible. His latex gloved hands gently touch the dried woman's cheek. Miss Joel, what do you think? We should leave. There's something. We should leave. Something is not okay, especially with that thing. Jewel had a paintbrush in her hand, dusting the silver round circle that had etched lettering on it. Why are her hands bound? The aide suggests her jaw should be relaxed, creating the. She dropped the brush and slapped her cheeks with both hands. Julie elongated her jaw and rolled her eyes back. Nels glanced at his assistant. Ah, the infamous screaming mummies. Like you said, this place has too much moisture. And my Nan has said to always listen to your gut. Joel finished speaking and studied her boss. He looked good, even if he was already graying. His face, youthful yet wise, the crow's feet around his eyes only added to his charm. Niles shifted his attention back to the preserved lady before him. Her dress is dark green, almost black due to age. A weathered white head covering lay deteriorated and forgotten, displaying voluminous red curls. I have never seen anything like this in all my years, especially in this area. That reminds me of a text that was found rather recently. I think it was trying to state the location of a forgotten kingdom and its preservation skills. Niles wandered away from the mummified woman. He placed one arm around his stomach, his elbow rested on the edge of his fingers. Placing a hand under his chin, he spun, pacing back and forth. Joel raised a brow and briefly glanced. She then switched her attention back to the circle. What is bugging you? I mean, there was this story of a princess who disobeyed her father and was punished by the court, said Niles. He stared intently at the dark haired woman. How was she punished? Have a good night. Sorry. Jill cocked her head, her eyes once again on the middle aged man before her. Professor Niles Bird, the charming archaeology prodigy from Brightmoor. There were drawings displaying the brutal. There were drawings displaying. Ah! Scusi! There were drawings displaying the blue. The blah 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 blah. Sorry! I'm having.
Take a breath. It's okay. Take a breath.
There were drawings displaying the brutal action the writer witnessed. It was the removal of our organs and to be dried as a husk, said Niles. Joel's hand hesitated. She found why she was still living? Yes, a very unfortunate fate, he swallowed thickly. Joel kept her attention on her boss. His bright blue sweater contrasted the dark stone walls. His white tennis shoes created a small echo as he moved. Joel huffed and shivered, shaking out her upper half. How did they get the hair to stay like that, though? She was a princess, probably given the utmost care, said Niles. Joel scoffed. You and I know men, and how they treat the ones who stand up to them. That is it.
You hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. Like the whole idea that I was kind of discussing in the prompt is this thing I see especially new writers do a lot where and actually so I see it in new writers of every stripe, and I see it a lot in romance in general, new writers or not. This idea that like a character walks on the page for the very first time, and you'll see something like John walked in the door. His patent leather shoes shined in the light. His gray slacks pleated perfectly with a white shirt tucked in and black jacket elegantly draped on his shoulders. His chiseled chin and blue eyes highlighted the perfect head of hair, his strong shoulders, and it's all everything you could possibly want to know about the character's looks all at once, right up front, before the person even talks. And that is a huge pet peeve of mine. And I have been guilty of it myself. Very frequently, though, when I'm guilty of it, I think it's a small character that isn't like that's just a walk on and walk off, and I just give kind of like all the things that you need to know, like up front. But like when you've got a main character, you've got the entire book to describe them, or at least the entire like first chapter or two. And so I really liked how you did do that. You sprinkled stuff in the red curls and the blue sweaters, and I know those are different characters, but like you just there was no point where you like said, and this is what this character looked like, let me tell you everything. And I think that is a skill that that is learned from a lot of writing, but also a lot of good reading. And so, yeah, I don't have a lot of criticisms in terms of the purpose of the prompt to describe characters in a non-info dumpy way. I would say A+.
Thank you.
Wolf? Wolf is probably eating.
Wolf is here. Okay, sorry about that. Wolf didn't want to just muffle something with what do you call it, food in his mouth, because that would be something. Give me a second. I'm trying to close something down because my computer gets hot if I have too many tabs open. Ugh, it's a life. Okay, sorry about that. I think that it's good. I think that everybody has a different approach when it comes to character description, and I mean, I know some people really like the sprinkling in, and I think that you did the sprinkling thing masterfully. I think that it was wonderful. For my personal preference, I always kind of find it a little distracting because I'm so focused on what's going on that it pulls me away, and I'm like, what? Why are we describing this individual right now at this right moment? That has nothing to do with you. That has more to do with my own personal preferences. And I think that you did a really good job. And I also really liked the description of the corpse, which is interesting because I have a different approach when it comes to this character work. I believe that the environment itself is a character in general, and so it should be taken in consideration as a character. And the fact that you gave characterization to the corpse just as much as you gave characterization to the living people, I really like that.
Thank you.
Did you have anything you wanted to say in response to any of it?
My thing was I was gonna make the corpse a character. The corpse was gonna come to life. I just didn't make it that far.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
I started writing it last night and I didn't get finished. I was like, oh no, I forgot to do this.
Well, I can certainly understand that experience. All right. Wolf, are you in a place where you can read?
Yeah, I can read. So I took a very different approach to this. No, normally we write prompts and things like that, but my approach to character description usually is a very strong paragraph, and then that's all you need to know. So what I did was I actually just copied and pasted various character descriptions from various different bodies of work that I've written, and kind of just did it that way because I was just more like a art portfolio rather than what do you call it thing. So that's what I did. Hopefully I don't get docked for that.
I don't think you'll be docked.
Okay, so this is Shadow Game, The Silent Screams, Introduction of Lance. I just kind of snippeted it out. I've gotten good at faking it. Just have to walk up to the stairs. Fuck them, sincerely. The stairs, that is. Just walk up the door, knock on the door and say, I'm Philip McCarthy. Though, I don't know how many people are going to believe me when I don't look nearly drywall enough for a name like Philip McCarthy. Feels a bit like trick-or-treating, except my costume is that of a white man. Knocking on the door, should have brought a bag. Maybe they have candy? Don't even eat candy much, still. The door opens. I'm gonna die, fuck candy. Standing before me at the threshold of the door is someone with quite the serious look to them. I can't tell if they're a real estate agent or the next leader of the mafia. They look of money and are wearing an expression I'm certain a number of assassins in my video games would give me. Pressed suit that looks dry cleaned. It's navy, well ironed, not a single crease on the blazer on the light blue dress shirt with the white pinstripes. I'm worried they're hiding a knife, or a gun, or any number of tools assassins would carry per entertainment media would dictate. Would do a little asterisk, a little scene breaky thing. This is also from Shadow Game, The Silent Scream. This is Spencer Holiday. I shuffle back around to head down the stairs. No one's fired a gun. Good. Good. I don't think I'm safe. Alright, just move on. Don't talk to anyone about this scenario and you won't have to go into hiding. Just get to the bus. Get to your next showing. Good plan. Where are you going? A disembodied, upbeat, slightly off British voice asked behind me. When you hear a happy, slight American British accent, you know shit's about to get serious. I swear, I don't know what's going on. Me neither, they snort a laugh. I'm not Philip McCarthy, I continue as I haven't been interrupted, keeping my eyes on the little iron gate and the stone sidewalk, scanning cars parked in the gutter in the old Victorian Quarter neighborhood. I mean, if you dyed your hair black recently, I would say no, you're not. They continue. Why are you talking to the steps? I just don't have time to. I turn around only to see someone staring at me with hazel eyes, seated on a counter in the kitchen, legs swinging out of the window, with wavy reddish-brown hair. Well, what it looks like... Hello? No. With wavy reddish-brown hair. Well, what it looks like is that the pink hair dyes fade into more natural brown. He shares similarities with the assassin real estate agent, except that he's giving me a look of a teenager who's just about to slip out of the house in a pair of pink pajamas with hearts on them with an oversized t-shirt that reads, "N baby." Pause, and we're going to go over to a different one. This is how I was forced to sell my face. This is Phoenix's description. A woman is sitting on a lounge chair, the sounds of others splashing in a pool. She's wearing a bright neon orange bikini with a martini glass at her side, sitting in a backyard with a veranda overhead and big round sunglasses, slightly red and sunburned somehow despite sitting in the shade, with beads of sweat rolling down pale skin. Then we've got another scene blank. This is Shadow Game Innocent Rose, and this is Ego's description. We're here, the Women's Health and Reproductive Care Clinic. I've heard from Cora and Vera that they have a good reproductive program. They get people in connection to midwives and have various birthing options. They have a doula program as well, something about the brown buildings giving me 80s office vibes, with soul-draining cubicles gutted and turned into a health clinic. Outside of the building is a courtyard connected to the surrounding forest around us. A sign labels this area as a protected wildlife habitat and pollinator zone. There's a wood bench painted turquoise and another painted purple. Cleo is sitting outside waiting for us, sitting next to someone with the skin color of bronze. Red and brass, the beauty of raw turquoise, something with reds, blues, and oranges in her complexion with dark brown curls like waves on the surface of ocean water, creating ripples over their shoulders, shining with various shades of brown based on the light, orange in the lightest, red clay in the midtones, and brown the color of earth in the shade. If fashion and makeup is an expression of self, I wonder what their dress says about them and who they are, wearing one of those sheer burgundy robes over a simple black dress with lace across the bust. Glamour, uniquely theirs. I'm certainly drawn to who they are and find myself attempting to trace their details in my mind. A dark burgundy lipstick, long diamond earrings, with one of those diamond necklaces with pendant droplets looking like raindrops on dark skin. Then one more little scene break, and this is Sage and Salt, and this is Transito's introduction. Lulu takes a second. His eyes focus on someone approaching us. Who's that? Some charmer with a pretty smile and curly, coarse, wiry hair that sits just above a decent jawline. Mine's sharper. Dark skin the color of fresh, wet mud with amber eyes. Smooth face enough that he isn't overtaken by facial hair, but enough stubble to make him appear rugged. Wearing a linen shirt tucked into a pair of trousers tied to his waist. Rancher's build, noticeable biceps, decent calves and thighs. Who are you? I ask. And that's it. Because my short descriptions were so short, I was just like, there's no way I could do like an original piece with this, because they're literally like,
Yeah, no, and that's actually my preference. Like I have said over and over again, like in my opinion, you describe a character as much as you need to and no more. And you let the reader make their own inferences, right? Um and now I have been told by uh readers, especially readers of color, that if you do not identify specifically like a race of a person in a character in your book, then people will default to assuming they're white. And I think that that is probably true. And I think that therefore, in order to represent different culture, you should definitely be calling that out when it's appropriate. But beyond that, let's say beyond that, um, I think the less description you have, the better. Obviously, uh, one of one of the things I've said in the past is this idea that like if the if there's something about the person that is imperative to the plot, like this character's got red hair and then the detective finds a red hair at the crime scene, right? Well, then it's important that we know that that character have red hair. But um but oftentimes, like, describe just as much as you need to and nothing more. um you need to do some description all the time because you can't just have a blank, like, humanoid figure. But yeah, you don't need the reader doesn't need every minute detail about the person, about every person that walks on the page. So, Wolf, I think that what you did there was perfect. Like, you're giving us a bunch of different examples of people that are being described, but only barely. Vespera?
Hmm? I think it was wonderful. Wolf's always very good with details, and he has a very good like storytelling um thingy. I'm sorry. I I always enjoy his characters. The details there he always has, like, even if it's not very much detail, you can always tell what character it is because he always has so much personalization
Yeah.
with his writing.
Looks like I'm looking off to the side. There we go. Yeah. Wolf, amazing.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, that's my approach with character description. So this is gonna sound thing, because I'm an artist and a visual artist as well, but also somebody who like works in character design when it comes to like video games and understanding that. I took like a more video game approach to my character descriptions. I wanted to like create very detailed, very like unique appearances for each person, so that way a person could like it imprints on their head. So that way, like, I took basically a character like design approach to my character descriptions, and it's always I make sure that I give people details and like things like, oh, the character looks like an assassin. Well, we all have an image of our head of what like an assassin is dressed like and what frame they have without ever having to go into that frame, because it just gives them enough of an imprint. And then I put little unique details of that one specific person into the framework of an assassin.
Uh, Sir Duratan was asking how do they know how much detail they need? Um, I think in my opinion, and all writing advice is subjective. Um, I was saying earlier that, like, uh,
You
if you
guys
read
are breaking
romance,
up.
not I am.
Yes. Now
Hello?
you're clear.
Okay. I was saying earlier that in romance novels, frequently, like they do info dump a
You're breaking
huge
up again.
paragraph. Okay.
Not for me.
It might just be for me. It might be my connection.
Um.
It would not be Vespera without it connection
Yeah. Right.
issues.
It would be like me to have tech and connection issues.
Yeah, but so it also depends on your genre and everything like that. But I just find that you wanna paint a watercolor, not provide a photograph. Is how I think of character description. Um, I don't need to know I don't need to know every character's eye color. It's not important to the story. Um, the only thing I'd say, and it depends on genre, is if you've got a mystery, right? Like I was saying before, and so you've got uh, a person with red hair and they find a red hair at the crime scene. So you need to tell us, before they find the red hair at the crime scene, or after, I suppose, depending on the situation, that one of the characters has red hair. If that's the case, then you need to tell us other characters' hair color, not all of the other characters, but other characters, so that it's not like blatantly obvious that, oh, this is the only person they're describing, so that must be the person that, we need to pay attention to. Um, but yeah, I would say, just generally speaking, I like to say describe characters in watercolor, not like as photographs.
My answer to this question is it's also going to depend on the narrative. So one of the descriptions in my various prompt was very detailed, but that's because the character is an artist, and so he's going to talk about the midtones and the undertones and this and that and how colors
Sure.
complement each other. So it's also about how the narrator is going to detail their world. Um, Neil knows this, and I talk a lot about this, but it's the rhythm of writing as
Yeah.
well. So, what is enough details? It's almost like a beat in a song, and so understanding when, understanding the rhythm or the flow of the details and descriptions. Some people are going to require a lot more, description than maybe somebody else. It really depends on like the flow and the feeling and like the like connection. And then also who the narrator is. If the narrator is an artist, then clearly, we're going to have Nathaniel talking about shades of light on, dark skin. Whereas like if the person is somebody who is not very artist detailed minded, but somebody who knows celebrities really well, they'd be like, oh, that he looks like that celebrity, but just like thing, you know what I
Yep.
mean? It's about also finding like those little um specifics that people use to describe people.
Perfect example. All right, I'll do my piece, and then we can move into conversation after that. Okay, this is from one of my various works in progress. This is from Bishop Church. Back at my building, I drove around the block a couple times to make sure there weren't any Fed types hanging around all sneaky-like. Once I was satisfied, I put the car back in the alley, locked down the boot around my tire, and grabbed the shopping bags from the back seat and headed up the back stairs. I lit up another smoke as I stepped through the door into the hallway and choked on it, as predictably, I suppose, there was someone waiting for me outside my apartment. The guy wasn't the same ilk as the goons this morning. He was thin and delicate looking, well dressed in a gray suit, and had shiny slick back hair. He leaned nervously against my door jamb until he noticed me, then stood up straight, shoving his right hand conspicuously into his trouser pocket. It's been a long day, I said, approaching my door and the man standing in front of it. Are you Bishop Church? He was nervous, agitated, speaking in staccato bursts and shifting his weight from one foot to the other. It's been a long day, man. Can we maybe do this tomorrow? Do what? He asked, looking confused. I gestured at him. I don't know. Whatever it is, whatever we're about to do, can we do it in the morning? I, the left corner of his mouth dropped like he. The left corner of his mouth dropped, and he looked a little defeated. He turned his body slightly, like he was going to leave, then stiffened and straightened back up. I saw his right hand ball up in his pocket, and he turned back to me, his face twitching at the edges. So, that's a no, I said. I want you to stay away from her. I emptied my lungs and dropped my shoulders. I'm serious, he spat. I don't know. He looked me up and down as if I were a piece of furniture he was considering buying. What she sees in you, but she's mine and we're going to work it out. You need to stay far away from her. Got it? I didn't know for sure what he was talking about, but considering the day I had a pretty good idea. I glanced at his hand shaking in his pants and at his face quickly becoming soaked in nervous sweat. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot, I said. What? He said. I stuck my hand into my jacket to get my keys. The man's face went white and he jerked his right arm up, but his hand got stuck in his pocket and he lost his balance. A loud crack filled the hallway and the man howled and fell to the floor screaming. Told you so, I sighed. He was just lying there, holding his foot and screaming. I stuck my key in the door and opened my apartment. Come on, I said. Let's get inside. I'm not sure how many gunshots it takes to get the police out here, but we've got to be approaching that number now. I'll get that bandaged up for you. That's as far as I'm going to go. I mean, it's 2,500 words, so I'm not going to keep going. Oh, I need to call on someone. Okay, Vespira, go ahead.
I didn't really catch any description, but I did catch characteristics through the writing, which is also functions kind of like a description. You don't know what he looks like yet, but you can already tell what type of person he is.
Yeah, I mean, there was a... Yeah. Wolf?
Yes, I do need a side tangent here. Vespira, I don't dabble in horror. I am a horror writer. I do mystery and horror. I am the father of nightmares. Anyway, I had to adjust that. Sorry. That's what FON stands for, if anybody was ever curious. I am the father of nightmares. Actually, there was description. What I actually like the way that you do your descriptions, Neil, and I've read Dark White and everything like that, is what I like is that you give a nice meaty chunky paragraph as you first introduce the character, then delicate man, and then you then sprinkle details throughout the rest of it as well. And that's actually the approach that I prefer, is like a nice meaty chunk of it, and then the rest of it is just kind of like looped through the rest of it. And that's always something that I've appreciated. I've actually heard this segment before because you said that you were doing a work in progress. So, of course, I naturally like it and it makes me laugh every time. So, I'm just sitting here. I like the dark humor, as always. And yeah, as Vasira said, what you do is you have like a really nice meaty chunk, and then you thread it through, and then also you add little bits of characterization that slowly begin to like reveal the picture.
Right, because describing a character isn't just what they look like, right? It's their posture, it's their the way they talk, it's their how do they seem nervous or calm, or all of that is descriptive of character. It's not just what their physical features are.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that was a pretty quick round of feedback tonight, and then we can kind of slide into our conversation that I wanted to have. And that is, I kind of want to talk about this idea of author community or writer community, and this idea of, like, like we have writer groups, and we get together and we feel like community, and we support each other and give each other feedback and all of that. But I feel like when we get beyond two or three people, like, that know each other and giving each other feedback, when we get into like larger community, like capital C community, that some of that stuff starts to break down, and people start feeling, uh I don't know if competitive is the right word, or defensive is the right word, or what, but uh I feel like I see a lot of division start to show up as soon as community gets bigger than just a couple of people. And so my question is, can we even have like a writer community? Can we have a community of writers, of authors, that is larger than just like a writing group? So I'm talking about on YouTube, or I'm talking about on TikTok, or I'm talking about on Twitter. Can we have a community that is multi-genre, you know, multi uh, experience level, trad and indie, um, all of that come together and all just be writers together? Or is that not, like, can that not happen, because ultimately we are competitors with each other? We're competing for people's time and attention, um, and ultimately we have to put ourselves, f- in the front.
The problem is with the writing community is it's always been very competitive. It's always been somebody trying to step on somebody else or somebody trying to undermine somebody else. It doesn't matter if it's trad or self-publishing. Someone has to feel better than another person does.
Right. So is that what it's about? Just making a person trying to make themselves feel bigger?
Most
Well, I mean, the
it depends on the person.
Wolf?
I was gonna say, like, we need to think about this in a broader perspective because I always bring out the broader perspective of these things, because everything is connected, and you can't look at singular pieces of information without seeing where the connections and whatnot are. Um, we have to recognize that, like, part of our society, part of our Western conditioning and our like Western like uh, lens and Western diaspora is focused on transactional relationships versus relationships that are collective. I think that we can have a community, but to have a community requires individuals to be willing to the best metaphor that I've ever had that I always bring up is community is a garden. So if we pretend that we're all in a garden and we, what do you call it? You can't just have tomatoes without ever planting the tomatoes. You can't just have, flowers without ever planting the flowers. And the idea about community as a garden is that people actually have to put, the effort and the time into a community to cultivate that community. And the reality of the situation is that we can't have community, but we have to shift our perspective from like individualistic mindsets and transactional mindsets to collective mindsets and community based mindsets.
Right. I think that that's interesting, and I think it's interesting the way you word that, because I've heard this recently in another context, and it makes me think about, um a community is built on relationships, right? And so there's different levels of relationships. There's, friendships and professional relationships, and then there are relationships that are there's acquaintances, but then there's relationships at least in a community where you might not know that person at all, but they're in your community. And so you do have a relationship to them. And I think that we forget that sometimes, because I think we can all agree that, and this is where I was having a discussion about like personal relationships and one-on-one relationships. And I said that, a relationship should not be tit for tat exactly, but there is in a relationship a built-in quid pro quo, in that you cannot have a functioning like personal relationship with someone if one person puts in all the effort and the other person doesn't put in any effort, right? You cannot have a functional relationship where one person is just, at least not a healthy one, where one person is, thinking of the other person and doing everything they can for the other person, and just always stepping up and always being there and always, and the other person is just taking, right? And not giving back. So it's not transactional where like, if I do this for you, you'll do this for me. But it is a relationship where I have to put in as much as I want to get out. And if you expand that to the idea of community, and even community, the relationships with people you don't know, you still have to be feeding positivity or into the community as a whole if you want to get positivity out of the community. And I think that is where I'm seeing a lot of issues on all the social media platforms in terms of like developing communities, is that there's always someone that wants to put either nothing or they want to put negativity in as a way of getting something out. And that is dysfunctional.
Right. Although I kind of so a couple of things, because I do fundamentally agree with the foundations of that, but I do want to add more to that foundation. People also have to get comfortable with the concept that people cannot, what do you call it, reciprocate in the same way as
Right.
them. Like I'm gonna talk about like more of a personal experience, but I have a friend. She understands that I'm on Social Security disability. She understands that I'm low income. But she's helped me out multiple times. Like she helped me out buying a new phone. But the way that I pay her back is not always in the money that like she gave me to be able to pay for the phone. It's maybe she needs an extra person in her photographs. Maybe she needs somebody who can buy her like a super fancy cheese or something like that. And people also have to get comfortable with the idea that people can only give what they actually currently
Yes.
have. And they have to be very comfortable with the fact that they might not get everything. And then also, speaking from a disabled aspect of it, I don't always have the energy to have things. And I think that people, or to give back. And I think that people need to get comfortable with the idea that people cannot give like, people are not like they have to get comfortable that my 30% sometimes is my 100%.
Absolutely.
Because I spent like the day being able to get up, being able to make myself something to eat, being able to take a shower, being able to do this and that like if I show up and I give you a nail polish as a thank you and talk to you for a minute, that's my 30%, but that is my 100%.
Mhm.
And the other thing is that we can't have positivity without discomfort. Ooh, and that's going to sound like thing, but the reality of the situation is toxic positivity is an issue.
Yes.
And the problem is that when people avoid conflict and avoid uncomfortable relationships, they also are not showing up, because sometimes relationships require uncomfortable conversations and they require conflict. And obviously there is ways of facilitating this conflict in healthy ways, and that's what a lot of people need to understand or need to learn, is how to navigate through conflict in healthy, healed ways. And the issue is, I personally find that the issue right now is that people want a positive community, but they want to avoid the uncomfortable or want to avoid the conflict or want to avoid the
Well,
discomfort.
I know what you're saying, and I know what you're referring to, and I'm gonna say that, like,
I'm not referring to anything. I'm talking very
okay,
plainly.
so
Yeah.
I think yes, and there's this conversation about this idea of, like, obviously in a community there are going to be people that disagree about things, and you have to be able to have quote unquote conflict. You have to be able to have disagreements, and you have to be able to resolve those disagreements or agree not to resolve those disagreements and just agree that they're unresolvable. Um, and you have to be able to do that in a productive and positive way, right? And that means that sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable because you need to discuss something that makes you uncomfortable, or you need to hear something that you or learn something that you don't know that makes you feel uncomfortable about yourself or about the world or about something. And yes, that is how we grow. That is how we change. That is how we improve ourselves. But there's a difference between being able to tell someone that you think they're wrong, and that you think that they're confused, or you think that they're misguided, or you think that they're uh, not yet educated on something, and trying to help them understand. And then, like, obviously you can only explain it, you can't understand it for them. So if they adamantly refuse to hear it and understand it, that's when, the conversation just stops. But I think that all of that can be done without being nasty and mean. And so I think that sometimes I hear this in my conversations about community like this, where people tell me that I'm tone policing, and they say, like, you know if you're on it's not my job to make you comfortable with the way I tell you something. And my response is, no, it's not. Um and you're right, a person does not have the right to just ignore parts of their community in order to, like, maintain their own comfort. Uh and by that we're talking about, like, pulling the blindfold on and just, like, living without growing and experiencing and understanding other people. But at the same time, if you're going to try to bring something to someone's attention, and the way you do it is by telling them that they're stupid, or that they're uh bad, um that's not a productive way for a community to grow itself either. And so it's not about, like, you made me uncomfortable because you were mean. It's like, and that's what I think people are conflating, is this idea of, like, yes, you do not have a right to comfort in terms of, like, being told new things. But I think that a community has a obligation to each other to do it in the most kind way, to communicate those things in the most kind way possible.
But who
Which isn't to
decides that
say,
kindness, though?
well, no, I would say, I guess it's the person doing it, like, not the person receiving it. It's the person doing it, to say that, if you go to a person and you say, look, I think what you just said is really stupid, and you must be an idiot, and you just obviously have never, like, experienced X, Y, or Z, or heard from X, Y, or Z, and so you should probably shut up and learn something before you talk. And if I say to that person, like, was that the kindest way you could have communicated that? And they say, yep, that was the kindest way I had to communicate that. Then fine, then that was the kindest way. But then don't act shocked when the person that you're saying that to says, fuck you, and just, like, and shuts you down and doesn't hear you because they didn't feel that you were coming at them the kindest way possible. And I think that there's always a way to say something to someone that is not like degrading them personally, uh with I think you can come at that and say, anything can be said in a way that's softer than like that example I just gave.
Right. So what do you call it? I think that like linguistically we should be um replacing kind with thoughtful, or a thoughtful response, because kindness, um Visvera is correct. Who gets to dictate what kindness is? Um because depending on who you're speaking to, what do you call it? I do agree that maybe we shouldn't be degrading individuals when we have conversations with them. Although I also think that part of discomfort and being uncomfortable is being uncomfortable when people are upset at you, and accepting that upset and that frustration, especially since considering, like, I'm speaking like from an outside but inside personal experiences. When you've repeated the same thing before and it doesn't feel like people are listening, then people will have bouts of that frustration. Because what does it take to get people to listen? Because I've said this like multiple times.
Right.
And
But have you said it multiple times? And I know the answer in this particular situation, but you have to ask yourself, have I said this multiple times? Like, if I said this 20 times to the same person, or have I said it 20 times to 20 different people? And if it's 20 different people, then the person you're talking to now doesn't have the experience that you've told it 20 times. And they feel like
Ah,
you're coming
I
at
know what
them,
this is about.
right? So if it is you're talking to the same person 20 times, then yes, obviously you get pissed. I mean, I lose it after 3, and my partner's constantly telling me with the kids, like, stop barking at them, and I'm like, well, I said it 3 times nicely and everyone ignored me. So yes, now I'm done like talking nicely about it. Um, but
right.
but if I was like walking down the hallway of a school, say, and I see a kid and I'm like, hey, stop running. And then I keep walking and there's another kid, hey, stop running. And I do that 5 times, and the 6th person I go, I've been telling you to stop running. Well, no, I haven't. I haven't been telling that person to stop running. I've been telling other people, and that person doesn't have the experience of hearing it from me before. So that I think is something to, again, this is all just stuff to like keep in mind. Nothing, I'm not laying down rules. Like I said before, if you want to talk to someone, like my example earlier, if that's, you feel like that's where you're at and that's the kindest you can be or the thoughtfulest you can be about it, fine. Like, that's like, but just understand, don't, like, you have to then understand how other people are perceiving you, right?
What do you call it? Yes, and as I said before, I don't believe in the idea of degradation myself personally. I also, again, because you know me, I always like to bring in, the concepts or the ideas, or like interject, like they is how do we take accountability, or like how are we accountable for like the 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years of generational trauma. Yes, we can continue that metaphor about a, a child running down the hall, but if we're talking about like communities and groups of communities, then what do you call it? It's one of those things where how many times does a singular community have to reach out to another singular community to be able to be listened to?
I mean, I know, and I agree, and I understand where you're coming from, and I can absolutely like understand what you're saying in terms of like that experience. Um, I just, that's when I was talking earlier about just this idea of like, I don't know, like, I try to what is it I say? Like, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately described or understood to be stupidity or ignorance, right? So if like it, I feel like we are in a place right now in our communities where we are assuming malice off the bat. And as people come in and come out of, the other thing we have to keep in mind is that, like, not everybody in the community is in the same like subgroups. And so sometimes a person is showing up in a subgroup and they've never been in that subgroup before, and they don't know that this subgroup has been talking about this for, ever. And they're coming in going, wait, what's going on? Um, and, and so it's like, if we can just, like, I think what it is like, give up, if you have not interacted with an individual person before, then give that person the benefit of the doubt the first time.
Certainly the first
And
time.
if they continue to, yes, that's all I'm saying, right?
But
like
what
you
do you
said,
call it? So, I was sorry.
no, go.
Because I'm going to expand on this, especially with your people running down the hallway metaphor. Okay. Because we're going to add a little bit more to this metaphor. Okay.
Okay.
Let's say the scenario wasn't just, hey, don't run down the hallway. You meet the first person, say, hey, don't run down the hallway. Go tell the person behind you. Then you meet another person, hey, don't run down the hallway. What do you call it? And go tell the person, the next person, hey, don't run down the hallway. You tell the next person. And somebody's been doing that for 20 years, and people continue running down that hallway. Like, how do you navigate a situation like that? Because that's.
Well, you're right. And there's two sides to that argument. And one side is that, for sure, like, there are certain things that, like, at this point in society, like, broad strokes, we should all know, right? We should just all know, like, the broad strokes of it. But the other side of that argument is, have you ever played the game Telephone? When one person learns a piece of information or a fact or an idea or a lesson, and then they tell someone, and that person, and say, and pass it on, and that person tells someone, and that person tells someone, you get to the 100th person and you ask them, well, what's the lesson? It's not even going to sound the same as it was in the beginning. So there's fidelity of message that we have to worry about as well, in terms of how people are receiving it. Now, like I said first, like, the broad strokes, like, treat others like you'd like to be treated, things like that. I think we can agree, like, that message has been passed down. We all got it. Like, and if you don't know that, then I don't know what we can do to help you. But I think when it comes to individual, like, more nuanced and detailed aspects that are coming up in communities and just starting to become something that community recognizing are important and integrating them into the fabric, that it isn't unreasonable to expect that even though one person's been talking, shouting it for 20 years, it's like the community just started hearing it, 6 months ago, a year ago, and it takes time for that to infiltrate. So I think that, it's important to just, like, I think that there's this notion of wanting things to change overnight. And I know it doesn't feel like overnight when you're the person on the side that's been screaming for 20 years. But and by the way, I'm not excusing people and saying, like, oh, well, you don't have to adopt these things. Like, this takes time. When you learn about it, like, you should, like, be the person, be the change you want to see in the world, and take it on. Um, I just, but if we're talking about, like, so we're not talking about individuals in that sense. We're talking about the community as a whole, and just understanding how long it takes for society to change.
Sure. But like this is why communities also have elders and community leaders, which we don't have. We people have, what do you call we? I mean, like speaking from an abolitionist and indigenous perspective here, our clans still had, chiefs and shamans and elders and people to give us advice. And like that's where people should be getting, the information, or that's where people should be learning. And then we go back to this game of telephone as the metaphor that we're using right now. But then what happens when the person telling the message is something that is someone somebody doesn't like, and they don't like them based off of a perception of who they are. See, and that's
Y-
something as well, because
Yes, and but you have to keep in mind that, and I'm just going to say this as the only person in this group that has raised teenagers, um, that at some point, um, the very fact that you are the wise elder who has had the experience and knows the stories and is trying to pass that along, the very fact that that is who you are is what makes it the person that they will not take the advice from. And I have seen it over and over again in my own life. I saw it this summer. My daughter and I were at the pool, and she was goofing off in the pool, and she knocked herself in the head and got a little cut on her head. And we got out, and I asked her if I could do anything, and I asked her if I could wipe it off, and I said, can I take you to the nurse's station? Can we get a Band-Aid on it? Can we do any of that? And she said, no, 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 no. And then a lifeguard came up that was a guy and was like, can I help you? Can I get a Band-Aid on that? Can I get, can I do something for you? No, 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 no. And then the lifeguard manager came up, who was a young woman, and said, would you like to get a Band-Aid on that? And my daughter was like, yes, please. And went with her and got taken care of. And it's that the fact that I was who I was, even though I was, the elder and the protector, that's why she didn't want that from me. And when someone that she felt was her peer showed up, that was something, that was where she was willing to get that help and that advice from. And we see that in our communities all the time. The person that has done it for years steps up and says, hey guys, like, I'm just telling you, this isn't how this works, and you need to be thinking about this way. And people go, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell, you don't know, everyone's different, experience is different. I don't want to listen to you. And then their peers come up and they go, yeah, we say this. And they're like, yeah, that's what, see, my peers say this. And sometimes it's not about, like, I hate this person because of, like, their whether it's their gender or their age or any of that. Sometimes
Neil,
it's just because they're the
no.
elder.
No. Yeah, no. This game of telephone is racist, transphobic, homophobic. Like, we actually have to acknowledge those things and be very direct and very bluntly about it, because we're not just talking about like they. You have to realize that, like, within the Western hegemony and within like the Western Foundation and the way that like our societal structures are, what do you call it? The very foundations of the societal structure is racist, homophobic, and
I do.
transphobic.
Yes,
And
I do.
so what do you call it? It's an ideal to say, oh, these people don't want to listen to these individuals because they're the elders, but the reality of the situation is oftentimes they don't want to listen to these individuals because they're black or because they are of a different.
I
Uh,
I recognize that, Wolf. I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that you're absolutely right. But you were giving the example that in tribes or in groups in smaller, society structures, that we have these elders
My
that pass
chat
down.
is from all over the world. I have people from Brazil, people I don't know where they come from. And I'm just saying, like,
You're just saying
I
what?
don't know.
Continue,
I'm sorry.
Victoria.
I was just responding basically to Wolf's, example and argument about like the elders passing down the information.
It's I need to get my head clear. Okay. So like I said, my chat's from all over the world and some of my stuff that I do. And I really appreciate them.
Of course.
But I feel like you're just going back to a whole situation that happened last Thursday. And you're trying to like get it cleared up in a way.
No, well, I've been thinking about this idea of community and writing community since before I even was back on the other platform. I've just been thinking about it for a long time. This idea of can we be a unified community of writers, or is that not possible because of the diversity in the structure? And I would my opinion is we should be able to, but I think it comes down to like and it's not, and I think I've been like siloing it in from like the greater society at large, like just looking at our country as a whole, and like our how are we able to come together and be a unified community?
The
uh
problem is
and
most people don't want to have open minds or understand that people have different experiences. They just want to take their experience and railroad another person with it. And then they want to say that even if it harms another person, that it's okay. But in general, we need to understand that even in community, we're going to upset each other. We're going to have our fights, but it's
right.
how we deal with them and how that things that we say.
Right, and we also have to unpack and deconstruct like this is the part. This is the actual like crux of the issue that keeps getting missed is, and it's a very uncomfortable truth, and it's one that people immediately shut down. And because Western language is based off of shame and guilt, our whole entire language is built on shame and guilt. To be able to have community means to unpack our prejudices and our biases. And the reality of the situation is that, um,
Most aren't willing to do that.
right, we have to unpack our internal racism. Everybody has it. Everybody has it because of the way that Western society has. We have to unpack all of our isms. We have to be able to like say, but the reality of the situation is that we can't do that until people are comfortable with getting uncomfortable, and also recognizing that when I say that you're racist, it's not a personal attack. It's just the way that our society has conditioned us to be. In order to be able to actually listen to people from outside of like our own perspectives and to absorb other people's perspectives, we have to say that, like, at least with the foundations of our society, that we are racist and accept that. And that's a very
Yes.
hard thing to accept, because that's the thing, is you cannot have community if you are not comfortable in accepting your flaws.
Yes. There was something I wanted to ask you about in there, and I lost the thread because I was paying attention to what you were talking about. Yeah. Oh, that's what it was. It was a question to Vespera. And you had said, I think, that most people aren't comfortable. They don't want to expand their horizons or their minds, or think differently, or challenge their point of view. And I'm not saying you're wrong about that, but I am questioning the idea, in so much as, do you think that it is that they don't want to, or is it that they're willing to but they don't know how to?
It could be a combination. It really could be just a combination. Some people aren't willing, some people just don't know how to. But it's all like a transitioning phase. To actually have a community and grow it, there's gonna be bumps and bruises and owies. And people's feelings are gonna get hurt, and they're gonna have some realizations about themselves and about other people.
Right. So if you've got a situation, and if we want to, take the metaphor and say, like, community, like, drag it down to a smaller thing and call it like a family, and we recognize that there's going to be hard conversations between each other, and that there will be some bumps and bruises, and that feelings will get hurt, then how do those hurt feelings get reconciled? And I'm not talking about person to person at this point. I mean, in a family, that's a good way of, like, analyzing it, but I'm talking about, like, with groups, and just, like, I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about, like, as a group as a whole. How do we get those hurt feelings to be reconciled with, so that you come back together? Just like if you get in a fight with your brother or your sister or whatever, like,
It
how do you
depends
fix
on what
that and
it's
come back?
about. And if the other party is willing to have that reconciliation, because if one person is willing and the other is not, there's no point in doing it.
Right. So the other answer to this is discovery, exploration, and revisiting the conflict in a calmer manner. So that's the thing, is right. And so in Western societies, we're told that emotions are wrong. Like, we are told we
Yeah.
avoid conflict. We don't allow people to express their emotions, and, like, this goes back to that whole entire tone policing thing. And I'm actually going to bring it up again, because I think that there is it that when somebody is frustrated within a conversation, I think that it's twofold. I think that, one, it is valid for somebody to be able to express frustration in a situation, and I think that a person needs to be comfortable that somebody might be frustrated with them, or, like, might be frustrated with the situation and not directly at them. And I think that we need to approach emotions with discovery and exploration. Well, this person seems very frustrated. Why are they frustrated with me? What did I say that, like, caused this reaction, and how can I approach them better? So when the hurt feelings are hurt, and when the emotions are felt, and when the argument is, what do you call it, calmed down, uh, you revisit the conflict, but you revisit in a more calmer way, in a way where we can have a discussion about it. You can process it. You can talk more calmly, and then provide solutions.
And use I language, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that like, Blair and I work on constantly, is this idea of, instead of saying you did this or you did that, saying I felt this or I felt that. And and I think when you come at it like that, it makes it easier for the other person to empathize, because they're not on the defensive. They're just hearing from you what your feelings were. And I think this works in a group dynamic as well. Like, to say, like, this is how we feel, and not to necessarily, oh man, I don't know. Like, I agree with you. Like, it's all this, like, it's the same kind of, like, therapeutic conflict resolution as you would have in a one-on-one or an interpersonal relationship. It's just harder to do when it's a entire community kind of working towards it together.
Right. So I wasn't born, what do you call it? I wasn't born in America. And one of the biggest struggles that I have is in Western language, you is like this ambiguous direct. Oh my goodness, he disappeared again. Let's
We
start a
lost
party.
Neil!
We lost Neil. Let's panic.
I'm
Oh, wait.
sorry, guys. I'm back. Uh, in Western language, what happens?
So, what do you call it? Always forget in Western language that you genuinely, oh my God, genuinely, oh my God, we can speak English, I promise. My brain is already going.
Genuinely?
Generally,
Generally.
Generally, generally.
Okay.
Generally that you always forget that like America only has y'all, whereas like in German, what do you call it? You've got you, which is the royal you, which is a group, a collective of you, and then you've got you as in you. And so I always forget that part. And it's always hard because when I am saying you, I am not talking about you. I am talking collective,
Yeah.
collectively, group. And
Yep.
I'm just like, do I need to just use the German word?
No. And just, as a person who was born in America and has only ever learned English, and it's a problem for us as well. Like I have this exact problem communicating with people all the time, where I'll be like, well, you can't just go into the store and do this or whatever. And I'm like, and I'll stop myself and I'll be like, not you, the individual, but one cannot just go into the store and do this. Because we do use the word you to mean collectively, you all. And it is misunderstood all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, and then like in Spanish we also have like a plural you. It's a collective group you. Group you equals group, and I'm sitting here going, oh my god. So that's always been something that I struggle with because I am bilingual, and so I'm actually like quadrilingual. We're not going to talk about it. I know German, French, Spanish, and English. So we're cooking. Um, I got the important ones. But uh, that's something as well too. Is that like mm, I don't agree with the idea of telling people that they cannot feel frustrated in a situation. I know that's not what you said, but like you have to understand.
Yeah, I
You have to understand how it would be translated in shame-based language, and people who are not like in a specific like level of their journey, how they might take that. Um, but I do believe that we need to be more open in the way that people speak as well, because again, I am I I know English, but was not my first language, and so I'm constantly using you, and then I'm constantly going, and then being confused, and I'm like, why are they taking this so personally? And I'm like, oh wait, hold on, oops.
because I just told them that they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's just a big struggle. But yeah, no, using I statements is always important. And then also sometimes it's even taking out the pronouns altogether. Like that's why I use like the language that I do, right? And when I say this behavior can sound like this, or when something like this is said, or focused on the language or the way that this would be translated, I just take out all the I and you in general and like strip it out and then
Yeah.
just talk about it like at its base like function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that that's helpful. And at that point, if the person, group, what, identity, whatever it is, on the other end of it still can't like wrap their brain around it, or won't like hear it, then you have done everything you can. You if a person is trying to be as neutral as possible, and just trying to use I statements and say how like certain words or behaviors or actions or whatever makes them feel, and what the consequences of them feeling that way can be, and what that can lead to. And the other entity is just like not hearing it, or not willing to hear it. Well, then at that point you're at an impasse, and that's when I think that you have two choices there. Either both parties can agree to table the conversation for later, or they can, just say this isn't going to work. And I think that in our communities, we're not doing either of those things. We're just all across the entire community locking in with each other, and like it's almost like like teenage girls, like they say, obviously this is this huge stereotype of teenage girls being like addicted to drama, right? And it's like you go and watch like Mean Girls or whatever. But that's how it feels in the community sometimes. Like people are riding a conflict as long as they can, and I don't know if it's a dopamine thing, or if it's uh I don't. I think it's all of it. But it's hard to tell when it's a person who's just fighting for the fight, when it's a person who is honestly trying uh, to help the community, and when it's a person that just doesn't know when like to like call it a day. And that's what I see in all of these fights. That's what I see in the Book Bros fight. That's what I see. I see it in the fight that we have every 6 months about whether audiobooks are reading or not. We get in this stupid fight, and people like dig in their heels, and it's like, are you fighting this just for the algorithm? Like, is that what's going on here? Or are you actually trying to convince someone and like further an idea?
Honestly,
Um,
my personal opinion on this answer, and it's something that I'm speaking like from personal experience as somebody who's autistic, but I have a couple of other slew of mental health disorders, and rumination is a very big one. I personally think that it is a lack of closure. I think the reason why we go back to these arguments is because people are not being given the closure that they need within these conversations. The reality of the situation is that it's always hurt feelings, but nobody actually acknowledges those hurt feelings that everybody thinks. We're talking around the situation rather than being able to have the discussion about the hurt feelings. And not only that, but we also what do you call it, police individuals' hurt feelings as well. So we tell people that their hurt feelings are not valid. We're just having a discussion about how we need to, sit in the comfort of individuals when they are having emotions, and, validate those emotions. No matter how valid or invalid those emotions are, they are valid to them in that given situation. And I think that
yes.
that's like how a lot of conflict could be resolved is we wouldn't be having the same conversations over and over and over and over again if people got the closure that they needed. And I feel like
I think that that's a great observation.
I think that's the biggest issue is it's the closure, right? You've got communities who probably still don't feel like they're being heard. The individuals who require reading and audiobooks where like something that seems like an argument that seems so frivolous to individuals who don't require these things as accommodations are arguing it from a very like frivolous perspective. That's just a very informal word, using it as frivolous. Whereas like individuals who actually do need these accommodations are arguing it from the perspective of like accommodations and need, and then basically the two arguments clash, but not a single person sits back and says, Hey, you know what? I wasn't looking at this from your perspective, and I'm sorry. I should have been looking at this from your perspective, and I got really triggered and I really got frustrated in the situation. I don't know how to handle another person's emotions when emotions start getting high, and I don't know how to handle my emotions when situations like this get high. We rarely ever have those kinds of conversations, and I think what ends up happening is because we live in a society where we're forced to just shove down our feelings and shove down the way that we feel, and we just hold on to it and like either disconnect from it or disassociate from it. It bubbles back to the surface because you can't, hide that emotion for for long periods of time. It'll eventually come back up.
Well, another issue is sometimes people don't want to hear when or don't want to take into account your like a mental condition. Like I've experienced that several times. Like they just want to look at you and be like, "It's you can't always use that as an excuse. You can't always be that way." And I don't know what I'm trying to say. Um, but yeah, that's a lot of the stuff that I get told is you can't use that as an excuse. Some of them don't want to listen or take accountability for not listening to another person and taking in their conditions. I don't know if I said that right. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying. I'm sorry.
Did you?
So I think that that's true, and I know that I have we have several children in our family that have various different special needs, um, and and it requires accommodation in the way people are treated and the leniencies that are given and the accommodations that are given. And so, not every kid gets treated the same all the time because different people have different needs. Um, and and I have definitely seen situations where people are like, well, you can't always use that as an excuse. And the answer for me in that situation is it's not an excuse. It is a reason. And and so because something being an excuse means that the consequence is excused. It is excused, right? And so you can get in a situation where you're like, look, this is my mental, like, this is my mental hurdle that I have to get over. This is my emotional hurdle I have to get over. This is my cognitive hurdle I have to get over. And and um and it's the reason that I can't do this, or I struggle with this, or I'm or I have problems with this. And sometimes that does excuse it, and it's like, okay, well, I understand, so we're not gonna there's not a consequence because of that. Other times it's, I understand that that's the case, and I empathize with it, and the consequence still exists, right? You can't, like, you can't go to court and be like, well, I didn't pay my taxes for 4 years because I have ADHD and it stresses me out to think about it, and so I just didn't do it. And they go, okay, well, then they're excused. It's like, well, we understand, but and you can get an extension, but you can't just not do it for 4 years. Like, there's still a consequence to that. um and it's not always really cut and dry. I mean, we have a kid that, like, has a little bit of the it's PDA or PA, demand avoidance,
Public
pervasive
public
demand.
demand.
No, not
No,
not public displays
no,
of
no.
affection.
What do
It's
you call it?
pervasive demand avoidance or
Yes, yes,
something
yes,
like
yes.
that. Um, it's not pervasive. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a demand avoidance thing. And um and we struggle because it's like, okay, so most of the time we can realize that when we ask something to be done or tell them that something needs to be done, that they're going to push back on that. And so we can like reframe it, or we can give extra time, or we can wait till they calm down. But there are times when it's like, no, actually right now you have to do this. Like we don't have a situation here where there is the opportunity for you to like process this. You just have to. And we can deal with the processing afterwards. And so like I think that's the flip side of it. It's that we have to be willing to give grace to people who need it in terms of whatever their situation is, and we also need to be able to understand that that sometimes I have ADHD, and I have what is it called, uh, major depressive disorder. That's what they call it. And so sometimes that prevents me from doing things, and people give me a long leash on it. And other times it's like, well, no, I understand that you have those things, but this still needs to happen, and if you can't do it, then that's a problem. And so I think like we need as a community to be able to, all of us, work together on both sides.
Right. Although then the question becomes, for here with his big boy questions, the question becomes, is there a need for consequences? And I know the pushback almost immediately, but there are things, I like to call them natural consequences. I don't have children of my own, but I babysit, children from various ages across the board. And I mean, for the most part, I don't do timeouts. I don't do like yellings or anything like that. Because I believe that like when you make a mistake, obviously there's going to be a consequence from that mistake, and the consequence is basically the natural consequence of what happens, right? If you steal your sister's toy out of her hand, and she slaps you across the face, well, that was a natural consequence for snatching something out of somebody's hand. And like we don't put our
Right. But then is that not also teaching the little one that if someone does something that they are allowed to hit
No,
them?
so here you go. This is how I handled the situation. They walk up and they always tell you half the story. Always half the story first.
Mm-hmm.
They're like,
Oh yeah.
she hit me. And I'm like, okay, what happened? And she's just like, well, she stole my toy, out of my hand. And I was just like, I have a question for you. Do you think that it was appropriate to hit your sister across the face because she stole your toy? And they had to take a second because I always ask them the question. I never like tell them.
Yeah.
And they go, no. And I said, okay. I said, do you think that it was appropriate to take your sister's toy out of her hand? No. Okay. So what do we do? What are we gonna do now? Well, I'm not gonna take her toy from her out of her hand again, and I'm not gonna hit her. Okay, cool, fantastic. What do you call it? Moving on. Like, and then we're fine for the rest of the day because it was just a moment to sit down and be like, none of this behavior was appropriate. Now go, don't do it again. And usually it works a good majority of the time. I've done that's my approach with children all the time. I always give you like half the story and then like also a thing, and I always get down at their level too. Um, I had to deal with a 4-year-old one thing from like the store, and like again, that's usually how I approach most situations. Even approach it with adults. I ask questions rather than what do you call it? Saying, well, this behavior, you shouldn't think. I always ask questions. I'm like, well, why would you do that, or why do you think that, or what is your threshold, or this or that. I mean, it's the same thing, and it's the same way that I approach children. Like, I have a 4-year-old that I watch, and she really wanted a toy because they always want toys. They always want something, and obviously, there's going to be a meltdown about it when you say no. So I got down on her level and I said, I have a question for you. The question is, how would you feel if your sister got a toy and you didn't? And she's like, I would be very sad. I'm like, yeah, that would be very sad. I said, how would you feel if I got something for myself but didn't get anything for you and your sister? She'd be like, I'd be sad. I said, okay, right now I don't have a lot of money to be able to get you something, myself or your sister something. And I would really like to treat us both to something. Can we wait until I have enough money for us all to get something? And she said yes. And guess what? The meltdown never happened.
You're very good with children. I could learn a little something from you. I think next time I'm in that situation, we're gonna call Wolf and
Yes,
just be
I
like,
wish I would have known you sooner. Like, this information is very helpful.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm very good with children, and they gravitate towards me. And I'm like, I've adopted them. Apparently, they magnetize to me. But like that, that's the thing is that I approach the same situation with adults as I do with children. And again, like not to like completely Vespera, if you want more conversation about what happened on Thursday, me and Neil, we're gonna probably do that too. Some conflict resolution, but
Mm.
yeah, if we talk about that, the thing was that I was using humor to defuse the situation. That was my intent. Obviously, clearly, that was not how the person received the information, and that's perfectly fine and acceptable. But I mean, like that's how I keep situations from escalating, even with children. Is I make a joke or I laugh because you know, like what were we thinking here? Because this is what. Let's take a second here. That did not work out
yeah.
well in my favor, but um, like that's the thing is like to have community is to acknowledge people and to acknowledge their emotions and to acknowledge their perspectives and approach every situation with curiosity, the willingness to want to make discovery, and it's not just about learning and growing, because learning and growing is like the last step of discovery, exploration, and curiosity.
It's the result of it,
Exactly,
right?
yes.
It's the it's the natural result of it. It's not something that is the even the goal necessarily. It's just what happens when you do that, when you're curious.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. We can have community. We just need people to not bottle their emotions, accept that sometimes the consequence of saying something really silly is that people are going to be frustrated with you, and then also be able to move through conflict with discovery, exploration, curiosity, and asking questions. Ultimately, I am an optimist, but I'm an optimist with realistic goals.
I am such a pessimist that my husband sometimes likes to call me a negative Nancy, and I'm like, where does that even come from?
Well, Nancy's got to do some conflict resolution, so she knows.
I tend to be an optimist. I want to be an optimist. But I have a cynical side that especially about certain things and sometimes that and I'm I'm gonna be 48 years old here in a couple months and I I'm starting to like I'm having finding myself having to fight back against being the grumpy old man and being the old man shouts at cloud and trying to stay connected and understanding as community changes and society changes and like my kids I think it's so funny because I know all the like Gen Alpha slang and like can talk to them in it and they're like, "Oh my God, it's so embarrassing, Dad. Don't say that." But but I try to stay like relevant in terms of uh as things change, but it gets harder and harder because there's so much, like, it's like, you know what it's like? Imagine this. Imagine like you're on a fishing boat with a motor, right? And you've got a little like board on a rope, and it's sitting out the back, right? And it's dragging on you, right? And that's a little bit of something. But but the more rope you let out, the further back that board gets, the more drag it creates. And I feel like that's how it is getting older, where it's like the more rope that's out there, the more past you have, the more drag it creates, and the harder it becomes to change, and to continue to change and to continue to evolve, because it takes more effort and more energy because you have more to overcome. Um, and it's not an excuse. It's just like something that's just occurred to me now, that like, I think that is a thing. And it just means that we have to, as we get older, we have to try harder. Um, but, uh, but that's something that I think happens to people. And I think there are people that just stop wanting to try. Like, it becomes too hard. It's too much effort to continue to change as things in the world change. And so they just give up and stop. And that's why, I mean, this is another dumb example, but like when I was growing up, like, I to this day, like, I listen to new music when it comes out. I like Taylor Swift, and I like Olivia Rodrigo, and I like I like the new music as it comes out. Not all of it, but I try to stay up to date and stuff like that. My parents, by the time they were my age, the only music they listened to was the oldies station. That was 50s and 60s music. It was the music that they grew up on, and that's what they just said, like, I'm done. Like, I'm just gonna listen to this station that plays the same 20 years of music over and over again, and that's where I'm at. And I think that a lot of people do that. They just go, oh, fuck it, forget it. I'm done trying.
Yeah, I wanted to add something though about kindness, because I think that like a lot of people assume that kindness, what do you call it, means that the person can never get frustrated. I find that situation with me all the time.
No.
A lot of people mistranslate that, because I get that all the time. Is that sometimes I am kind up to a point and I'm patient up to a point, but the moment that you like throw some disrespect, I'm going to be very direct and very blunt about my boundaries. And oftentimes people are like, "Oh, you've changed. Oh, you're aggressive," and I'm like, no. Also, Neil, if I do decide to do the thing that we're gonna do on TikTok,
You know what? I'm gonna call that, because I'm not
okay.
feeling well, and so yeah, I had something for lunch that disagreed with me, and my
Are you?
yeah, I'm not feeling well, but
You're not roasting, are you?
but I
You're not
what?
roasting, are you? Because I know your office is hot.
Oh, it's cooled down here a lot. No, I'm not even sweating. It's like 50 degrees outside. So I'm very comfortable in here right
N-
now.
It was just that I was gonna down
I
that.
think that there's another distinction that I like to make about that, Wolf, and that is, kind does not necessarily mean
Yes,
nice,
exactly.
right? It doesn't mean you have to be like friendly and nice and like sweet. Kind just means like not being cruel, right? And so you can be kind and still be blunt and direct, and you can say to someone, like, if you take like my example from way back then, you can say something like, what you just said doesn't make sense to me, and I don't think you've thought it through, and I think you should find some more evidence and examples, and I think you should maybe look up what you're talking about and try to educate yourself further, and then I think you might change your mind, because I don't think you really understand what you're talking about. And that is being direct, and it's being blunt, but it's not being cruel. And so I would say you're being kind. You're being as kind as you can be, to be direct with the person and get your point across. It doesn't mean you have to be like, oh, I believe you're trying to do the best, but no, you can say you don't know what you're talking about. And you can say, you need to be educated on this. And you can even say, you need to be educated on this, and I am not the person that's going to do that.
Right. Exactly. No, I absolutely agree. People need to recognize that people can be kind without being nice. The very fact that, like, I take the time out of my day
Yep.
to educate people or continue to try to be polite and direct is me being kind. Oh, trust me, I could tell you
Yep.
some stuff that you would not like. It would be hilarious to me, but you wouldn't like it. But no, I was about to say, clearly you're not feeling well, but I was about to put that boundary down. I said that, if people, um, for me personally, one of those individuals in the comment section was very much asking me questions that were not in good faith, and what do you call it, was very much goading me, and it was absolutely disrespectful, and I will not accept that again.
In the comment section
On
here or
TikTok.
over there?
Oh, on TikTok.
Okay.
I will not accept that again.
Okay.
I am Wolf Lovelace, father of nightmares, and you're gonna put some respect on my name. You're gonna put some bedazzle on it, okay?
Yeah.
Let me. I'm on a podcast or like a BookTube, and I do this every other Thursday. This is Wolf Lovelace. He is father of nightmares. I made a mistake. He does horror and mystery, and Neil does noir fiction. And so we get together, we discuss like various different things that's going on in the fiction world, and like we write prompts, and then we like sort of give each other feedback.
And then we have discussion like this, where you
Yes.
randomly walk
Yeah.
in when I'm like, put some fucking respect on my name.
Good morning.
You will respect
Thank
the
you for
father of
pats.
nightmares.
Yes, exactly. Oh god. And like that's been my biggest issue, Neil, is like it's not necessarily that I'm frustrated at one individual. What I'm frustrated at is I've been talking about a certain topic for about 3 months. I have so many videos on it. I have so many like things. I direct people to useful information and people who say useful things. I've been doing this for 3 months. And it's not the strangers, it's the people that I know that you would think are paying attention and to what I'm saying, that's what's frustrating me, is that I feel like I am not getting the respect that I deserve from certain people. Not necessarily like everybody, but certain people. It's like, hello. I've been pretty much the expert in this entire fucking like conversation at this point. So like sit down, shut the fuck up, and like do some listening.
And most people don't want to hear
That's
it.
not super helpful there, Wolf. Wolf, that attitude is not the way that we build community, right? Like because you and I don't always agree, even on this subject, or especially on this subject, and yet like I respect you, but I'm not going to sit down and shut the fuck up. Like I'm gonna engage you and make you make an argument, and you are very articulate. You make a very good argument. Um, uh, I think though, like we were talking about earlier, none of us make a good argument when we're emotional. And like my therapist tells me all the time, if you're emotionally flooded, you are not in your thinking brain, and you are not going to be able to make an argument. So you need to, and she's talking about like when I'm talking to like individuals in my life. But I think it's valid for us all, like in everything, to be like, And you know, one of the things I made a video about this when I first came back, this idea of like, before you make a video on a topic, ask yourself, and this isn't about you, this is just about generally, like, before you make a video on a topic, ask yourself, why am I making this video? Is this video adding anything to the conversation, or is it just piling on? And if it's not adding something new to the conversation, you don't need to say something that everyone else has said just so that you've said it too. And I think we all need to remember that, because that is where the discord starts to spiral, right? It starts to spiral downwards, because it's just, it's like 2 or 3 or 4 camps of different opinions that are just like, everyone's making the same video over and over again, yelling at the other people, and it like just spirals down, and no one's getting anywhere, because it's not about adding something new. It's just about engagement tracking for
For the most part,
whatever people are
for the
complaining
most
about.
part, that was a joke. What do you call it? When it was a generalized like flat joke. But when I'm
I know, I laughed out
what
loud.
do you call it? Because what I'm trying to get people to like understand is that like I bring up harsh conversations that are very uncomfortable. And you were just talking about before people make a video, it's the same thing with responding to my videos. It's, am I adding
Yes.
something to this conversation, or
Yes.
am I just uncomfortable right now and am I triggered? So that's actually what I mean by sit down and listen, is more like you need to engage your brain right now. You need to be able to sit down, hear what's being said, and if what is being said makes you feel a certain way, then you need to explore that emotion before you go and think. Like, a lot of people don't seem to recognize that, like, I don't respond to their comments the very first day. It took me like 2 weeks to get back to somebody's comment because I was processing it. I was thinking about it, and I finally said, you know what? I have, some constructive feedback that I need to hand, over. And like, it takes me a very long time. And a lot of my videos, what do you call it, are like weeks in making, because Wolf spent like a bunch of time thinking about it and talking with other people about it before I put it online. And I wish that that's how people would approach me in the comment section sometimes, which they don't. And that's what I was trying to express. It's just like,
I know that that's what you were expressing, and you were very funny when you said it, but I just felt that it was like worth pointing out that we had just finished a conversation about not.
yeah,
But it was, yes, I I understand your sense of humor.
yeah, it was mostly just a joke. But yeah, it's just like, I want, when people are engaging with me, what I'm trying to express is that I want them to engage with me in as best as best as healed as they can, versus as triggered and defensive as they can. I really like, that's all. That's what's been really frustrating about this, is that it's been 3 months, and I can just tell that the people approaching me are approaching me from very unhealed perspectives. And a good majority of the time, not all the time, but a good majority of the time, I still approach them with, what do you call it, the information, and understanding that it might not reach them at that given time, and I still approach them in a way that like says, hey, you know what, this behavior is doing this, and this is what you are displaying, and I really need you to like sit down and process what you're actually saying and how you're approaching me. And like, that's the frustrating part. It's not necessarily individuals themselves. The frustrating part is like, I can tell that you're unhealed. We cannot have this discourse and we cannot have this dialogue until you approach me in like a way that it facilitates an actual like uh zone of conversation. I like how it's a
All
zone, and
right.
I motion with my hands. You guys don't see any of my.
Well, I think that's all. That's all that we
So,
have to say. Like, that's all there really is to say. We've kind of. I feel closure on this, at least in the conversation that you and I have been having, kind of back and forth for a couple weeks, Wolf. In terms of this, I feel like we've heard each other, and I feel like I have a sense of closure on it, in terms of, like, I think that you and I still don't agree 100% on some of the finer points of, like, people's responsibility in choosing their books. But I'm more towards your side than I used to be. And but I feel like at least there isn't this, like, I don't feel like there's a misunderstanding between us
I
anymore.
never thought there was a misunderstanding between me and you in the first place. What do you call it? I do take people as an individual, and I always approach people as their own individuals. You're not that person, so therefore I will hear you out on what you have to say. I mean, like me and my friend in real life, who's great, who helped me out with a phone when my phone died. What do you call it? We don't see eye to eye on everything, but like 97% is much better than like 30%.
Yeah.
When we're like
Yeah.
30% like in disagreement, then there's a thing. And I don't look for people who agree with me. I look for people who align. And that's a bit different.
Yeah.
Alignment and
It
agreement are
is.
so much different. Alignment simply just means that you are open to having conversation and being able to like shift or look at other perspectives, whereas agreement means that you're forcing people to actually agree with you, and that's not what I want to facilitate.
Yeah. And that's what I said earlier today, was that you and I are, I think, very much pointed in the same direction on most of these things. It's just like little details that aren't even really that important to be ironed out. They're just like nuances. And again, like you say, we don't need to agree. We are aligned on the important
Right.
things.
In shorthand, you frustrate me the least, Neil. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Oh, come on. I try to frustrate you enormously. I am constantly trying to frustrate you. I got to work harder at that.
You step it up. Oh my goodness. Sorry.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. We're coming up on 9 o'clock. It's been 2 hours. It's been a really good night. But my tummy is really upset right now, and I got to
Okay.
go.
Have a good night.
All right.
Peace.